Sando Trini, a San Fernando story. The breadfruit and the island women. I remember the taste, the smell and the texture of the main filler in the pigtail soup my Aunt Ina served us at her home in El Dorado Road in Tunapuna, Trinidad. It was the half-ripened yellow breadfruit. Her breadfruit soup with salted pigtails was so delicious that it was reason enough for spending the August vacations at her house. To some people a soup with those ingredients may not be appealing, but it depends on where you live and the food you were exposed to while growing up. The breadfruit is a very unusual fruit. It is called breadfruit because it grows on a tree as a fruit, but when it is roasted, it has the consistency of freshly baked bread. It is dry in the inside and even has the color of baked bread. I ate a lot of breadfruit and other starchy foods called ground provisions. We were poor but we didn't know it, because so many people in San Fernando ate the same foods we ate. We saw the breadfruit as a blessing, a way to have bread all year long. The fact that breadfruit could be prepared in such a variety of ways meant that it was number one on the menu. It seemed like there were at least 2 breadfruit trees in every yard in old San Fernando. The reason that we enjoyed breadfruit at Tanti Ina's house was that she specialized in recipes containing this readily available staple. Breadfruit can be boiled or fried, or boiled then fried. It can be roasted in an open fire without removing the skin. When it is blackened and the skin is peeled off, the roasted fruit inside can be sliced and served as bread. Breadfruit is also a thickener for soups, and can be used in place of potatoes, dasheen, edos, yam, cassava and young green bananas. Young boys in San Fernando used the sticky sap from the bark of the breadfruit tree to trap birds which they kept as pets. This sap was known as lagli. My Aunt Ina had 2 large breadfruit trees, one in the front of the house and one at the back. In San Fernando, there was a large breadfruit tree in her yard, to the left of her house, and against the fence. At the back of the house, the branches of the neighbor's breadfruit tree protruded over the fence into our yard. We harvested the fruit which hung over the fence. Our neighbor, Mr. Pierre, didn't seem to like that, but there was nothing he could do but scowl at us. I learned later that this filler food of the poor, especially among people of the West Indian Islands, was not native to the West Indies. The breadfruit was native to the Polynesian Islands, which are thousands of miles from San Fernando, and the fruit was brought to the West Indies as a cheap source of food for laborers in the sugarcane fields. Slaves were brought to the West Indies to work in the Sea Island cotton and sugar plantation. There, they were encouraged to have large families. It was a good thing for slave owners, because it was cheaper than buying more slaves from Africa, but a problem arose when they tried to feed the expanding workforce. Any part of the farm animal deemed unfit for the table in the big house was given to the workers in the field. For example, the slaves stuffed the outer casings of a pig's belly with seasoned breadcrumbs, rice and spices, which we call chitlins and blood puddings today. Other dishes consisted of feet or tails. For example, cowfoot soup, sauce, or cold pig's feet, and hot pig's feet, pigtails and oxtails or cowtails. Today, many people consider these recipes to be delicacies. There was still a need for a cheap and filling food which the slaves didn't have to cultivate. Food cultivation took time and labor away from tending to the cash crops which supported the plantations. Mutiny on the Bounty was a film made in 1960 which depicted the story of the English ship's captain who almost lost his life in search of the hallowed breadfruit. An English explorer named Captain Cook toured the islands of the South Pacific Ocean in 1769. During his journey, he saw the breadfruit plants in the French Polynesian Islands. He was impressed by the rapid growth of the trees, and by the abundance of breadfruit on a single tree. He brought back a few breadfruit plants. He took them to Jamaica and Barbados, and in a few years they had produced a lot of breadfruit. Plantation owners had to feed thousands of slaves. He saw the potential of reaping a great bounty if he could bring breadfruit plants and sell them throughout the islands to be cultivated as food for those slaves. He saw a need for breadfruit in Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, Grenada and St. Vincent among other places. It was left to another English captain to make the big breadfruit run. Captain William Bligh left England in 1787 to collect the plants needed to provide cheap food for the slaves toiling in the Caribbean sunshine. His ship was aptly named the Bounty. The story of this breadfruit run by Captain William Bligh in 1787 was taught in schools in San Fernando, but the name of his expedition was known as the Mutiny on the Bounty. The captain and his sailors arrived at Tahiti, the largest of the Polynesian lands, after 10 months of sailing. They remained on the islands for 5 months collecting young breadfruit plants. During that long layover, many of the sailors formed relationships with women on the island. The sailors loved the breadfruit and the island women, but that mixture turned out to be very bad for the captain. In April 1789, the sailors, who had grown accustomed to the island breezes, island foods including breadfruit, and island women, refused to leave. They orchestrated a mutiny, and the captain and 18 other men were kicked off the ship. They were set adrift in a small boat to fend for themselves in the vast ocean. The captain became a castaway. He and his loyal sailors island hopped for over 4,000 miles, until they arrived at the Dutch colony of Kupang in Indonesia, over 40 days later. Miraculously, only 3 lives were lost during the perilous journey. The power of the breadfruit was so strong, that Captain Bligh made another trip to Tahiti in 1791 for another 2,000 breadfruit plants. He knew that breadfruit and island women was not a good mixture, so he took precautions to keep all his sailors in check. He returned to the West Indies in 1793 and sold the plants to plantation owners. Descendants of these breadfruit plants are spread all over San Fernando today, and they flourish in every island of the Caribbean. In 1818 and 1823, some of these breadfruit plants were also planted in the botanic gardens of Trinidad and Tobago. They can be found close to the nutmeg walk section of the garden. It was rumored that it was easy to trap a Sandow man with an oil down, which is not a body massage, but a mixed pot of breadfruit, cassava, pigtails, callaloo bush and coconut milk. It is said that breadfruit oil down is stronger than sweat rice. Calypsonian Lord Brighell said that a woman had trapped him in a pot of oil down. I'm sure that it was the power of the breadfruit he was talking about. She gave me some food the other day. I feel so delirious. I throw it away. A dog was passing the same time. He smelled the food and he started to whine. The hardy breadfruit has never stopped traveling. Today, breadfruit and breadfruit flour can be found in grocery stores in many parts of the world where there are of West Indian people. The breadfruit deserves a lot of respect. It came from thousands of miles away to feed the poor people of San Fernando, and it remains a very important part of our cultural identity. The end.